AITA for leaving my sister and her new husband stranded on their honeymoon because they wouldn't stop pranking me? I'm 28, and I have a younger sister who's 26. We've always been close, but she's the classic prankster of the family. You know the type, always up to some mischief. Usually at my expense, and usually, I can roll with it. I'm not saying I love her pranks, but it's one of those things you kind of get used to. Especially when it's your sister. Most of the time, I just go along with it, figuring it's harmless fun. She's got a good heart, she just doesn't know when to quit. Fast forward to her wedding and honeymoon. This is where things start to get complicated. When she got married recently, she asked me if I'd drive her and her new husband to the cabin they'd rented for their honeymoon. It was a few hours away, and they didn't want to rent a car. So they thought, why not ask me? And I thought, sure, why not? I didn't want to splurge on an expensive gift, so I figured helping them out this way could be my wedding present. It felt like a nice gesture, and they seemed genuinely excited. Plus, the cabin was supposed to be in this beautiful mountain area, so I thought it'd be a fun day trip. I should have known this was going to be anything but a relaxing drive. So, the big day arrives. I pick them up, they hop in, and right from the start, they're in full prank mode. I don't mean light-hearted jokes or a few harmless laughs here and there. Nope, they went straight for the stuff they knew would get under my skin. First, my sister somehow managed to switch my GPS to a language I don't even recognize. I still don't know how she did it. I'm trying to follow directions to this remote cabin, and the GPS is talking to me in what I think was maybe Russian. But she's laughing her head off in the backseat like it's the funniest thing in the world. Meanwhile, I'm trying not to drive us into a ditch. Then there's my phone. I had it up on the dashboard, mostly for music and, in case of emergencies. At one point, I noticed it was missing. I start checking my pockets. The seats, everywhere. Turns out they'd hidden it in the glove compartment, just to mess with me. I know it sounds small, but you've got to understand. We're out on these winding mountain roads, with barely any signal, and my phone is my backup if anything goes wrong. But to them, it's just hilarious. And, of course, they couldn't resist messing with the radio. Every time I found a station I liked, they'd switch it to something obnoxious. Then they'd start singing along off-key, just to push my buttons. And every time I tried to explain that maybe it'd be nice to just have a peaceful drive for a change, they'd laugh it off and say, come on, don't be so serious, it's just a little fun. Meanwhile, I'm gripping the wheel like it's a lifeline, trying to keep my cool. By the time we're halfway there, I'm already exhausted, mentally and physically. It's not even noon, and I feel like I've been through an entire day of dealing with their antics. But I kept telling myself, it's their honeymoon, just let it go, don't ruin it for them. I was determined to play the good sport, but deep down, I was starting to question if this was going to be worth it. Finally, after what felt like the longest drive of my life, we reach the cabin. I'm relieved, thinking that once we get there, I can just drop them off, take a deep breath, and drive back home in peace. But, of course, they have other plans. As soon as I pull up, they both start going on about how I have to check out the view with them. They're practically begging me to stay a bit longer. I figured, alright, what's another few minutes? Plus, part of me thought that maybe once they'd settled into this honeymoon mode, they'd chill out a little. So, I get out of the car and follow them around the cabin. The view is, I'll admit, pretty impressive, but I'm not exactly in a take in the scenery mood at this point. I'm counting the minutes until I can leave. Then they suggest grabbing a quick snack together. And I think, fine, one snack, then I'm out of here. We step inside, and it's cozy, but my gut's telling me something's off. Sure enough, as soon as we're done with the snack, I realize my car keys are missing. I just left them on the table, and now they're nowhere to be found. I glance over at my sister, and she's got that mischievous look on her face, the one I've seen 1,000 times since we were kids. I knew immediately that she'd hidden them, and her husband is just as in on it, trying, and failing, to keep a straight face. I play along at first, trying to keep my cool. I ask where the keys are, and they just laugh it off, saying, oh, come on, maybe you just misplaced them. I try looking in all the obvious spots, thinking they must have stashed them somewhere nearby. But no, they really went for it, hiding them somewhere I'd never even think to look. 15 minutes go by, then 30. I'm tearing apart the cabin, practically begging them to give me a hint. They just keep laughing, saying, you'll find them eventually. At this point, I'm beyond frustrated. I've got a long drive back home, and I just want to be on my way. It's not like I came out here to spend the day hunting for car keys. Finally, after about 45 minutes, I manage to find the keys, buried under a pile of cushions in the loft area. I'm fuming, but I try to keep it together, telling myself to just get in the car and leave. I tell them I'm done and that it's time for me to head out. But of course, as a parting shot, they think it's hilarious to spray silly string all over my car. I just washed the thing before the trip, and now it's covered in pink and green strings, which are already starting to stick because of the heat. I barely say goodbye. I just get in the car and start driving, feeling like I've been nothing but a prop in their personal comedy show. At this point, I'm done. They'd pushed every button I have, and the honeymoon prank routine wasn't even funny, it was exhausting. and I felt completely used. Little did I know, though, the real fallout was just about to start. As I finally start driving away, I'm replaying everything in my mind, getting more and more annoyed with each mile. I'm trying to shake it off, telling myself, just let it go, you're free now, it's over, but I can still feel that simmering frustration. The whole drive up was one big prank after another, and the whole cabin fiasco felt like some twisted scavenger hunt I never signed up for. About halfway back home, I start to feel a little calmer, like maybe I can let this go and get on with my day. I'm already thinking about what I'll do to unwind once I get back, maybe take a walk. Grab some lunch, just something to reset my mood. Then, as I reach over to the passenger seat to grab my phone, my hand hits something familiar. I glance over and see my sister's purse and my brother-in-law's phone sitting there in the backseat, right where they left them when we stopped for gas. I had totally forgotten they'd stashed their stuff in my car. Instantly, I feel this surge of anger come back. The one thing they actually needed on their honeymoon, and they just left it behind. Too caught up in their pranks to even notice. And now, instead of heading home like I'd planned, I'd have to drive all the way back to return their stuff. Part of me thinks, well, maybe they just realized by now and will call me to come back. But then another part of me thinks, no, they're the ones who wanted to keep messing with me. This is on them. Right on cue, my phone lights up with a call. And it's my sister. I consider ignoring it but pick up, trying to keep it together. She's in a full panic, asking where I am and if I can turn around to bring back her purse and his phone. I tell her, in as calm a voice as I can muster, that I'm already halfway home. And honestly, after everything they put me through, I'm not in a rush to come back. She tries to sound sympathetic, but I can hear the irritation creeping in when she says, come on, it's just a prank, don't be such a buzzkill. At that point, something just snaps in me. I tell her they can figure it out on their own, and if they want their stuff, they can pick it up when they get back. I can feel the frustration boiling over, and I know she can hear it in my voice. But I don't care. I'm done being the easygoing big brother who just rolls with it. For once, I'm sticking to my guns, even if it means they'll be furious with me. After I hang up, I get a few more calls, which I ignore, and then my phone buzzes with a stream of texts. Some are from my sister, trying to guilt trip me, saying I'm ruining their honeymoon, and others are from my brother-in-law, who's being downright rude, saying I'm making a huge deal out of nothing. But I know this isn't nothing. It's years of their pranks, years of being the butt of their jokes, all building up to this moment. And finally, I'm putting my foot down. For the rest of the drive, I can't help but feel a little guilty, but it's mixed with a strange sense of satisfaction. I've never stood up to them like this before. Maybe it's because I always thought being a good brother meant letting them have their fun. But now, I'm realizing there's a difference between being a good sport and just being taken advantage of. They crossed that line, and for once, I don't feel like the bad guy for setting a boundary. When I finally get home, I'm feeling a mix of relief and guilt. I try to settle down, but I can't shake this nagging feeling. Sure, I stood my ground, and I told myself I deserved that moment of dignity after everything they put me through. But now I'm starting to wonder if maybe I overreacted. I start second-guessing, questioning if I could have just laughed it off, dropped their stuff back, and been done with it. But then, I remember the look on their faces as they laughed while I scrambled to find my keys. Or the silly string covering my clean car. And just like that, my annoyance bubbles right back up. Not 10 minutes later, my phone starts buzzing again, and this time it's my mom. I brace myself, knowing this isn't going to be a pleasant conversation. She launches right in, saying how my sister called her crying, saying I abandoned them and ruined their honeymoon before it even started. Mom is fully guilt-tripping me, saying things like, couldn't you have just played along? You know your sister's always been a prankster. She just wanted to have a little fun on her big day. Hearing that, I feel this wave of frustration. It's like everyone else thinks their pranks are just part of the package, something I should accept without question. I try to explain how over the top it all was, how exhausting it was to sit through hours of pranks just to do them a favor. I tell her about the key hiding, the GPS nonsense, and the silly string, but it's like talking to a wall. She just keeps saying, it's harmless fun, she's family, she doesn't mean any harm. That's the thing, though, maybe it's harmless to everyone else, but I'm the one they're always picking on. I'm the one who has to sit there and play the fool while they get a laugh at my expense. Mom finally sighs and says, well, maybe you should be the bigger person and apologize. It's her honeymoon. After all, just give her stuff back, and let them have their fun. At that moment, I feel this sense of betrayal. Even my mom, who knows how much they've pushed me over the years, is siding with them. I politely tell her that I'll think about it and hang up. But the whole thing just leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. As if that weren't enough, my sister starts texting me too. Her messages start off sweet, almost pleading, talking about how she's dreamed of this honeymoon and how she wanted to start it off with a laugh. She tells me that she didn't mean any harm, that I should know her by now. But then, when I don't respond, the tone shifts. Suddenly, she's not so nice anymore. She says I've embarrassed her in front of her new husband, made her feel small on a big day, and that I'm the one being selfish for making this trip all about me. And that just hits me hard. I try to remind myself why I stood up for myself in the first place. I tell myself that if I give in now, it'll be more of the same. More pranks, more jokes at my expense. More of them just expecting me to be okay with being their personal punching bag for laughs. But the guilt is creeping in, and it's almost overwhelming. I mean, maybe I could have just driven back, given them their stuff, and sucked it up. Would it have been easier? Maybe, but I also know it would have been another missed opportunity to finally tell them. In my own way, that I've had enough. That night, I try to go about my routine, making dinner and watching some mindless TV to distract myself. But every time I check my phone, there's another message, either from my sister, her new husband, or someone in the family weighing in, saying I should have been more understanding. Even a couple of friends text me after hearing from her. And all of them, without exception, think I overreacted, that I just couldn't take a joke. I try not to let it get to me. But the loneliness of feeling like I'm the only one on my side here? It's brutal. In bed that night, the texts still come to mind, and I find myself justifying it all to myself again and again. I wonder if maybe I'll reach out tomorrow. Maybe offer an olive branch. But another part of me thinks, no, this is what you needed to do. This was the only way they'd finally listen. The next morning, I wake up with a sense of dread. All the messages and calls from the night before are still on my mind, making me feel like I can't escape this whole mess. It's not like I didn't expect some backlash, but the sheer volume of it is overwhelming. It's like everyone decided overnight that I'm the villain of this story. I'm the bad guy for drawing a line, and they're all acting like my sister and her husband's behavior is completely normal. But I know that if I cave now, it's game over. They'll never take me seriously again. Still, that doesn't stop the guilt from creeping in. I try to get on with my day, doing the usual routine, but I'm distracted. Part of me just wants to get it over with, call her, tell her I'm sorry, and move on. But the other part of me feels like apologizing would just erase the one moment I finally stood up for myself. I replay that car ride in my mind, the endless pranks, and the feeling of being their punching bag, and it makes my stomach turn. Why should I be the one to say sorry when they pushed me this far? Still, I can't ignore that nagging voice telling me I might have gone a little overboard by just leaving with their stuff. Maybe I could have driven back, handed over the purse and phone, and let it be. Maybe that would have been enough to show them I was fed up. But at the same time, would they have even taken that seriously? Or would it just have been another thing they laughed about later? Another joke about, oh, remember that time he got all huffy and still came crawling back? As the day goes on, I find myself scrolling through old messages between my sister and me, seeing the good times we had before she started treating every interaction like a setup for another prank. It wasn't always like this. We used to get along great, actually looked out for each other. Somewhere along the line, though, it changed. She found her love for pranks, and I became the target. I want that old connection back, but I don't see how I can get there if she can't respect me as more than her personal joke. Around noon, I get a call from a mutual friend of ours. Someone who wasn't on that ridiculous, you need to apologize, bandwagon. He says he heard what happened, and instead of taking sides, he actually listens. He lets me rant, venting about how I've always been the punchline to her jokes, how no one else seems to care because they're not the ones being humiliated. It's the first time since this all started that I feel like someone understands where I'm coming from. He doesn't tell me what to do, but he does say something that sticks with me. If you apologize now, make sure it's on your terms, not just to make everyone else happy. And that hits me. If I'm going to apologize, if I even want to, I need to do it because it feels right to me. Not because I feel pressured by my family or society's idea of keeping the peace. I need them to see that my boundaries are real, not just something they can steamroll with a well-timed joke. I start drafting a message to my sister, something that acknowledges the hurt on both sides but also sets some ground rules. I tell her that I didn't mean to spoil her honeymoon, but that her and her husband's behavior went way over the line for me. I try to explain, as clearly as I can, that I'm not being overly sensitive or dramatic, but that years of being the target of their pranks finally caught up with me. After some hesitation, I hit send, knowing full well this could go one of two ways. I don't have to wait long for a response. Barely 10 minutes after I hit send, my phone lights up with a notification from my sister. It's a wall of text, longer than any message she's ever sent me. My hands shake as I open it, bracing myself for another round of her telling me I just don't know how to take a joke, or that I'm being overly dramatic. But to my surprise, she actually starts with an apology. Well, kind of. She says she's sorry if I felt hurt by her pranks. There's that if, again. Like the problem is how I reacted and not what they did. She says she never meant to make me feel humiliated, that she just thought it was all harmless fun, and figured I knew she was just messing around. She tells me she thought I'd find it funny, that she and her husband had no idea I was feeling this frustrated. But then, a few paragraphs down, she shifts the tone. She starts saying that maybe I do need to lighten up and learn to laugh at myself. She mentions how everyone else in the family enjoys the jokes and that nobody else ever gets upset. And then she brings up how I ruined the vibe of the whole honeymoon trip by taking off with their stuff. She says she didn't realize that I was this sensitive and says maybe I should work on that. I can feel my face heating up as I read. It's like she's skirting around the point, almost acknowledging it but then twisting it back around to make it seem like I'm overreacting. And maybe that's the worst part. It's like she can't see the issue without minimizing it or making it about me needing to change. I'm boiling over inside. I was hoping she'd understand, maybe even see things from my perspective. But it's like she just can't help herself. After a few minutes, I close my phone and put it face down on the table. I need a minute to breathe, to let the frustration simmer down before I decide what to do next. Part of me wants to call her, tell her off for turning my feelings into a punchline again. But there's another part of me that's just tired. Tired of explaining. Tired of defending my boundaries to someone who should have respected them from the start. That's when it hits me. I've been trying to explain myself. Trying to get her to understand. But maybe I'm just wasting my energy. If she can't see why what she did hurt me, maybe there's nothing I can say to make her get it. I think about all the times I've been her target. All the times I laughed it off or pretended it didn't bother me. And I realize that I've been enabling this too, by letting her keep treating me like a prop for her pranks. I gave her the green light to keep doing it. I take a deep breath and start typing my final response. I tell her that I need some space. That I love her, but I'm done being the butt of every joke. I tell her I'm not apologizing for setting boundaries and that I'm not interested in lightening up, if that means letting people walk all over me. I wish her well. Tell her I hope she had a great honeymoon despite everything. And hit send. It feels like a weight has lifted. Like I finally took a stand for myself. Even if it wasn't the response she wanted. I don't know if she'll take it well. And honestly, I don't care. For the first time, I feel like I've reclaimed a part of myself that's been buried under all her jokes. It's a small victory, but it's one I'm willing to hold on to. In the days that follow, there's a strange calm that settles over me. My sister hasn't replied to my last message, and I'm not entirely sure she will. I've thought about it a lot, and I'm okay with the silence. For the first time, I feel like I've made peace with the idea that I can have boundaries with her without having to explain or justify them. Maybe she's stewing, maybe she's moved on. Either way, it's not my problem right now. Oddly, life feels a little easier without her constant comments or texts popping up, filled with new ideas for pranks or teasing me over my reactions. It's a quiet I didn't realize I needed until now. There's no sting in it, just a sense of relief. With that mental space cleared, I start doing more for myself. I reconnect with friends, take on a few new projects at work, and find myself really enjoying things without looking over my shoulder, wondering if a joke at my expense is lurking around the corner. It's freeing, really, to live without that anticipation of the next harmless prank. Then, one evening, I get a message from her. It's not long, just a couple of sentences. She says she's sorry if I felt hurt and that she's thinking about what I said. No defensive explanations. No, lighten up, comments. It's not exactly an apology. But there's something there. A bit of sincerity maybe. A tiny bit of understanding. I take it as a good sign. Though I don't jump right back into things. I decide to give her the space to reflect without any pressure from me. I'm learning that it's okay to demand respect. Even from family. It's okay to stand my ground and say, enough. There's no guarantee she'll ever change or that things will be different between us. But I know I'm different now. I know I won't be the silent, accommodating sibling who laughs off everything just to keep the peace. Looking back, I think maybe this whole situation was a wake-up call, a chance to finally take control of how I'm treated. To let people know that I'm not just someone they can joke about without consequence. Maybe it'll be the start of something better. Or maybe it'll mean more distance between us. Either way, I'm at peace with my choice. In the end, I realized this wasn't just about pranks or my sister's habit of going too far. It was about learning to value myself enough to say no when something doesn't feel right. And accepting that my feelings aren't just punchlines for someone else's amusement. It's about moving forward on my own terms. And I'm finally ready for that.
AITA for firing my assistant after she used company money to throw herself a farewell party, but didn't actually quit. I own a mid-sized tech consulting firm. It's not a Fortune 500 company or anything, but I'm proud of it. We're a solid team of about 30 people, most of whom have been with me for a while. And we've managed to create a pretty strong work culture. That's something I've worked hard on because, well, when people spend so much of their lives working, they deserve to feel like they're in a place where they're valued, respected, and encouraged. A few months back, I hired a new assistant, Lily. She's in her 20s, around my age, which actually felt nice at first. I thought we could relate well. You know, same generation and all that. Right off the bat, Lily had this bubbly, quirky personality. She was quick to share stories about her life. And honestly, I didn't mind. It seemed like a refreshing change from the usual buttoned-up attitudes. She seemed competent, and although she had this unusual flair, she was good at getting things done. But, looking back, I can see some red flags now. It wasn't anything overt or damaging, at least not at first. She'd sometimes make creative suggestions that veered into the personal. Like ideas for company activities or team-building events that were, let's just say, unconventional. For example, she once floated the idea of a Mystery Monday, where we'd all wear costumes to keep the energy up. Fun in theory, but not exactly something a consulting firm needed to pull off every week. I brushed it off as enthusiasm. And maybe a little inexperience. Over time, though, she started crossing a few lines that felt more uncomfortable. One day, she told me she'd found a great place for company lunches but mentioned that we should totally take a vote on what cuisine to order for every lunch going forward. It was just odd. But who doesn't want a bit of enthusiasm in the workplace? Right? I kept it all in stride, thinking she'd settle into the role as time went on. Then came last week. I had to go out of town for a conference. Something I was looking forward to for months. It was a chance to network, catch up with industry friends, and, honestly, just have a little break from the office. Plus, with Lily handling everything, I thought I could relax. Knowing things were covered back home, she seemed more than capable of managing the basics. I left feeling good, like I was leaving the office in reliable hands. When I got back to the office Monday morning, everything seemed off. Usually, there's a predictable rhythm to Mondays, like a calm before the storm where people ease back into the work week. But this time, there was this strange energy in the air. People were whispering, throwing me these weird glances as I walked through the halls, and a few of the team members were stifling grins or outright avoiding eye contact. I shrugged it off at first, thinking maybe something funny had happened over the weekend. But as I made my way to my office, I noticed something unusual. There were remnants of what looked like a party all over the break room. There were half-deflated balloons taped to the walls, streamers trailing down like they'd been up for days. And, on the counter, a half-eaten cake with, "Goodbye, Lily," scrawled across it in pink frosting. My stomach dropped. Goodbye, Lily? I'm standing there, staring at this cake like it might somehow explain itself. But then I thought, okay, maybe she got a new job and threw a last-minute party to say goodbye. But, no, that didn't make sense. She'd never mentioned leaving, and besides, wouldn't she have told me directly? Or at the very least, sent me an email or text? I grabbed my coffee and tried to shake off the weirdness as I made my way back to my office, figuring I'd get some answers once I checked my emails. Sure enough, at the top of my inbox was a company-wide email from Lily with the subject line, "Farewell, everyone." The email went on about how she was off to pursue new horizons, and how much she would miss working with everyone. She ended with some sentimental sign-off about cherishing memories and the usual fluff you'd expect. But here's the kicker. The timestamp on the email was Friday morning. I had been out of the office for just a few days. And she took it upon herself to throw this elaborate farewell bash, only to show up on Monday as if nothing had happened. I was dumbfounded. I scrolled through my inbox, looking for any follow-up emails, maybe one from her officially resigning or giving notice. But there was nothing, just radio silence from her end after the party email. I couldn't sit there staring at my screen any longer, so I went straight to Lily's desk. She was sitting there, typing away, looking totally unbothered, as if the whole farewell fiasco had been a dream I'd cooked up over the weekend. I took a deep breath and calmly asked her to come into my office for a quick chat. She nodded, grabbed her notebook, and followed me in, flashing me this cheerful smile that only added to my confusion. Once we were seated, I jumped right in, trying to keep my voice steady. "Lily, I saw the email about your farewell and the decorations in the break room. I'm a bit lost. You didn't mention anything to me about leaving. Are you actually resigning?" And, without missing a beat, she bursts out laughing, like I told her the world's funniest joke. She waved a hand dismissively and said, "Oh, that, no, I'm not actually leaving. That was just a little experiment, an opportunity to see how everyone really felt about me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "An experiment?" I repeated, trying to keep my cool. "Yes," she said, with a big, proud grin. "I wanted to test the waters. You know, to see if people would miss me, or if they'd try to convince me to stay. Just a fun little social experiment." She said this as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. Like everyone throws a $2 farewell party just to gauge their coworkers' affection. I felt my face getting hot, and it took everything I had not to immediately call her out for wasting company money on her experiment. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, "So, you didn't think it was necessary to ask for permission to throw a party on company time? Or to use the company card for the expenses?" Lily's eyes widened, as if she'd suddenly realized that maybe, just maybe, there was an issue here. "Oh, well," she stammered, "I thought it was all in good spirit. And besides, it was just a few snacks and drinks. I didn't think anyone would mind." I blinked. "A few snacks and drinks? Lily, I saw the receipts. You spent nearly $2. You hired a bartender, catered food, and even ordered custom decorations." She shrugged, still somehow unfazed. "I just figured a little splurge was justified. After all, a farewell like that doesn't happen every day." At this point, I was genuinely at a loss for words. I couldn't understand how she didn't see the problem. How she hadn't thought for even a second that this might be an issue. Sitting there, I realized I needed to spell this out for her. Plain and simple, she clearly wasn't grasping the gravity of what she'd done. I took a deep breath, trying to put all my frustration aside, and calmly explained, "Lily, what you did wasn't just a social experiment. You misled the entire company. You wasted company funds, and you used everyone's time on something that wasn't real. You can't just use company money like it's your own for something that, frankly, was completely unnecessary." She looked at me, tilting her head, As if I was the one missing something obvious. But it was meant to bring us all together. You know, I wanted to see who would miss me. Who would stand up and say, "No, Lily, don't go." I thought it would be bonding. I couldn't believe it. Bonding? At $2,000 of the company's expense? I laid it out even clearer. Lily, I pay you to be an assistant. To help keep things organized. To make things run smoothly, not to conduct experiments on your coworkers. It's about trust. When I hired you, I trusted you with our accounts, our operations, and frankly, with the well-being of the entire team. You broke that trust when you decided this was a reasonable use of our resources. Her expression turned defensive, and she leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. So, what? You're saying I'm not allowed to be creative? That's pretty harsh, don't you think? I just wanted to try something different. Bring a little life into the workplace. I took a long pause, trying to find the words that would finally make this sink in. Lily, creativity and bringing life to the workplace are one thing, but throwing a fake farewell party with company funds crosses a line. That $2 could have gone towards something valuable for the team. Something we all needed, and honestly, your so-called experiment didn't build trust, it did the opposite. People need to rely on each other here. How are they supposed to rely on someone who treats their job like it's a stage for personal stunts? Her face started to change, finally showing a flicker of realization, but then she shook her head. Well, I still think you're overreacting, she muttered. It was just one little event. I knew then that we weren't on the same page. This wasn't going to end with a simple slap on the wrist. And she didn't seem to grasp that. I'd hoped she'd own up to her mistake, that she'd see the bigger picture. But all I saw in front of me was someone who didn't get it. Someone who wasn't going to get it. And suddenly the path forward felt all too clear. As much as I wanted to avoid making a drastic decision, I could feel that firing her was inevitable. I kept hoping she'd show some remorse. Maybe apologize or at least recognize what she'd done was wrong. But no, she just sat there, arms crossed, looking at me like I was some kind of killjoy for calling out her farewell party. It was obvious she still didn't see how serious this was. I took a moment, collected my thoughts, and went over every reason why this just wasn't going to work out. First, she'd misused company money in a way that was wildly unprofessional. $2,000 might not break the company's bank, but it's not chump change either. And more than that, it wasn't hers to spend. Then there was the whole deceptive element of the thing. This wasn't just a prank. She'd outright lied to her colleagues, creating an emotional upheaval in the workplace. People had believed her, invested in this goodbye, and then she turned around and called it a social experiment. I couldn't trust someone like that in this role. Not when her actions showed she'd prioritize a laugh or a dramatic moment over the real responsibilities of her job. And if I'm being honest, it went beyond trust. It was about respect. I'd worked hard to create a professional environment here, one where everyone knew their role and did their part. She had shown none of that respect by pulling a stunt like this. So I took a deep breath, looked her in the eye, and told her, Lily, this isn't going to work out. Your actions crossed a line, and I can't keep you on here. She stared at me, shocked, and I could see her scrambling to come up with a response. Maybe some defense or another attempt to pass this off as no big deal. But I'd made up my mind. I kept my voice steady as I added, you need to clear out your things by the end of the day. I'll make sure your final check is ready, but you're no longer employed here. She looked at me, disbelief and anger flashing across her face, and as she stood up to leave, muttering something about how unfair and rigid I was. I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. This was what I had to do, not just for me, but for everyone else at the company who deserved a safe, professional space to work in. Letting her go wasn't easy, but it was necessary, and as I sat back in my office, taking a deep breath, I knew I'd made the right call. I thought that firing her would be the end of it, but little did I know that Lily wasn't about to go quietly. By the next morning, my phone was blowing up with notifications. It turns out she'd taken to social media to air out her grievances in a very public way. She painted me as the heartless boss, who had no respect for her mental health journey and creative ways of team bonding. At first, I just rolled my eyes. It was clear she was spinning the story to make herself look like the victim. But as the comments rolled in, it was harder to ignore. Some people I didn't even know were jumping in to call me names, saying I was toxic or that I was contributing to a stifling corporate environment. She made it sound like I'd stomped all over her innocent attempt to connect with the team. She even implied that the whole farewell party was some sort of stress release she needed for her mental health. I was stunned. Now it wasn't just about a farewell party. She was making it a narrative of workplace oppression and a misunderstood genius. Then I started hearing from mutual friends. A few reached out, just trying to understand what had happened. Others, though, actually bought into her side of the story. They'd read her post and thought maybe I should have been more understanding, or given her a second chance with a warning or a docked paycheck. One friend, who has known me for years, even suggested I was being too corporate and should remember that people make mistakes. I had to remind them that this wasn't a mistake, like forgetting a deadline or sending the wrong file. This was an orchestrated, premeditated party she threw for herself using company funds. And it wasn't just the social circle. I started noticing a few people in the industry dropping cryptic comments on my LinkedIn posts. implying that I was some kind of dictator in my own company. I was floored. It was like this little prank had turned into a full-blown smear campaign. And all because Lily was offended I didn't appreciate her experiment. I wondered how many of these people actually believed her story and how many were just jumping on the drama for fun. Either way, it stung. For a while, I felt like maybe I was the bad guy here. Was I too rigid? Should I have just brushed it off as an unusual, maybe even eccentric attempt at building team morale? But no matter how I turned it over in my head, it came back to the same thing. This was my company. And I couldn't let someone treat it like their personal playground. As the social media storm continued, I had to remind myself of my reasons for firing her. Trust, respect, professionalism, those were values I wasn't willing to compromise, even if it meant getting dragged online by someone who clearly couldn't see why her actions were wrong. And honestly, I realized that if people were quick to judge me based on one side of the story, maybe they weren't the kind of people I needed in my corner anyway. So I stayed quiet, even when some friends called to tell me about the posts. Even when I had the urge to defend myself publicly, I figured if people wanted to believe a twisted version of what happened, that was on them. I knew the truth, and I knew I'd made the right decision, no matter how loudly Lily tried to paint herself as the victim. After the social media storm, I thought things would finally settle down, but it wasn't long before I started noticing shifts at work. A few of my employees were acting different around me, quieter, keeping conversations with me more formal and brief. I knew that some of them must have seen Lily's posts or even been following along with her story as she updated her followers. It stung to think that people who worked for me might be questioning my judgment or even buying into her accusations of oppression and lack of appreciation. So, I did something I hadn't anticipated. I called a company-wide meeting. I decided it was best to address things openly rather than let the tension fester and get twisted by rumor. I wasn't about to stoop to the level of spilling every detail. But I knew I had to explain why Lily was no longer with us. The truth, in the simplest terms, I started off by acknowledging that they probably knew about her posts and might have questions. I explained that Lily had made some poor choices, ones that involved breaching trust and abusing company resources. I made it clear that her social experiment was never authorized or sanctioned, and that her actions had left me with no choice but to let her go. I wanted them to understand that this wasn't about a single prank or a creative attempt at team bonding. It was about respect, accountability, and professionalism. I also took a moment to share how much I genuinely valued each of them and the work they did. How I built this company with the hope of fostering a team that could trust one another and work toward shared goals. And that trust, I emphasized, was something I took very seriously. After I finished, I could tell by their expressions that they got it. Or at least, they understood my side. A few even nodded, and I caught a couple of them exchanging glances as if to say, well, that makes more sense now. I didn't go into details about her farewell party, or her misuse of funds. I felt that was unnecessary. But I hoped I'd at least restored some confidence in my leadership, in why I had taken the steps I had. To my surprise, a few employees approached me afterward. They'd seen her posts, but they'd kept quiet, knowing that what she described didn't match the environment I'd worked hard to create. One employee said, "It just didn't seem like you," which was validating to hear. They appreciated my transparency and the reassurance that I wasn't sweeping things under the rug or pretending it hadn't happened. When I got back to my office, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. I realized that even with Lily's dramatic posts and online accusations, I didn't need to defend myself to the whole world, just to the people who mattered. The ones who worked alongside me day in and day out. I'd done my part to clear the air, and now I felt like I could move forward without second-guessing my decision every step of the way. In the end, it was my employees' trust and understanding that reminded me why I started this business in the first place. And while I'd learned a tough lesson about keeping a closer eye on new hires, I knew that the loyalty and integrity of my team would help us weather whatever came our way next. After that meeting, I realized how much this experience had changed me, not in a way that made me bitter, but in a way that made me see what I wanted for my company and what I needed to do to protect it. I knew that I couldn't ignore the lessons Lily's fiasco had taught me about boundaries, trust, and leadership. First, I decided to make a few practical changes. I revised the company's guidelines on expenses and set stricter protocols around the use of company funds, ensuring all purchases required written approval from at least 2 people in management. It wasn't just about preventing another Lily situation, but about creating transparency and clear expectations for everyone. It made sense for the business, but it also gave me a sense of security and reassurance moving forward. Next, I took a good, hard look at my hiring process. I wanted to bring in people who not only had the right skills but who valued professionalism and mutual respect. So, I set up an additional interview round with more emphasis on work ethics, personality fit, and overall maturity. It's not foolproof, but it's a way to get a better sense of someone's character before they're part of the team. I also thought a lot about my own role. As much as I value camaraderie, I realized that I had been a bit too lenient and informal with certain employees, myself included. This experience made me see that my role as the owner sometimes has to come with a little more distance than I'd been maintaining. I'm the leader, and people look to me for guidance and boundaries. It's not about being rigid or distant, it's about setting an example. I want my employees to feel comfortable and respected, but also to know where the lines are drawn. In the end, as much as I was blindsided by Lily's antics, I think the incident has actually strengthened our team. After the meeting, there was a noticeable shift. The team seemed to pull together in a way I hadn't seen before. There was a sense of unity, a shared understanding that we'd faced a challenge and come out the other side. It gave me hope that whatever came our way, we'd handle it together. So, I moved forward, focusing on the positives and letting go of the frustration I felt during Lily's farewell. I kept reminding myself that this was a lesson, an expensive, frustrating, and stressful one, but a lesson nonetheless. And, funny as it sounds, I ended up feeling grateful for it. It reminded me that my company's strength lies not in one person's opinions or in a perfect, unbroken record, but in our ability to handle challenges, rebuild trust, and keep moving forward with clarity and integrity. And that, I realized, is what really mattered all along.